All right, guys. Hello, hello. So this is episode 3 of the Context.io App Challenge office hours, virtual office hours with our good friend Tony Blank, who is coming to us from, Tony, where are you now again?
I am in Idaho, just on the other side of the state line from Jackson, Wyoming, Jackson Hole, and I'm just taking a little kind of working vacation up here for this week.
That is fantastic. So we don't have any viewers yet, so we'll hold on for that. But if you guys are joining late, you can speed up to the real-time portion of this broadcast by pulling the time kind of bar on the bottom all the way over to the right. That'll give you us in real time. You can also ask questions via the handy-dandy QA feature in Google Hangouts. And while we wait, we can hear more about Tony's bear feeding experience. He was just telling me that he bottle fed baby bears, which is pretty darn cool.
Yeah, there's tons of amazing things to do up here, a lot of outdoorsy things. So I've been horseback riding. My steed was this lovely horse named Quigley, who was the hungriest horse in the world, I think. He'd way more interested in eating all of the grass along the trail than actually staying with the group or actually walking or any of those things. Then we went canoeing on Lake Jackson, which was a lot of fun. Took a picnic and paddled around this beautiful lake with mountains. It was very nice. And then we also bottle fed baby bears. Went to a bear sanctuary, and it was one of those kind of like drive-through safaris where they have like 50 bears that are really interested in checking out your vehicle and probably trying to escape. And they had a couple of baby bears that we fed with bottles, and it was very adorable. I wanted to take all of them with me.
I'm sure. That's awesome. That's really cool. So Tony, I noticed that, people are pretty busy on the discussion board this week, asking lots of technical questions. We do have one viewer, but while we're waiting for questions to come in here, anything that you feel like is worth recapping for folks who might be joining us later on?
Yeah, we in the previous office hour hangouts, I have talked about the best ways to add users. The two ways being Connect tokens, where we manage the user flow, and then there is a way you can manually add users by making API calls. And most of the questions that I've gotten the last week have been related to the best way to get your users permission and authentication and add them to your app. So I guess I would encourage people, if they're having issues with that, certainly adding users is one of the first things that any app will have to do. You have to add users to get access to their email and build cool apps for them. I would really encourage you to check out the blog post or to reach out to us certainly sooner rather than later. And be sure that you have that user authentication piece built and functional and working. That's definitely been the most of the questions that we've gotten were around that, and that certainly is one of the trickier things, because a new developer using Context.io, there's a lot of authentication that has to happen. You have to figure out the right way to authenticate with us to make API calls, so we know that you are who you say you are. That's using your key and secret to sign the requests. And then after you figure out how to talk to us, then we have to figure out how to talk to your users' email servers. So that's that using Connect tokens and that kind of thing. That process of how we get access to access their email accounts. So there's a lot of authentication that has to happen before we really can start building things. So that's a really key piece to understand.
Got it. That's helpful. So we do have a decent handful of viewers now. So just kind of a recap for you guys. There is a QA button if you have not joined us or done a Google Hangout before. That should be on the left-hand portion of your screen. You can ask questions, and Tony will answer them in real time for you. You can ask as many as you want. Don't hold back. So let's get those going. In the meantime, we are down about just over 10 days. We're about a week and a half out from the deadline. So I know that there's definitely people working feverishly on things per the number of questions that we've been getting, which is great. I would love to see those things put into action, like draft submissions on the site. You can actually click that submit button and continue to update your application for as long as you want until the submission deadline comes upon us. So feel free to do that so that you're not stressed at the very end of the deadline here.
Yeah, and we certainly would love to see what everyone's building, and we're just very curious. So certainly encourage you to submit early, and you can, of course, revise up until the last minute of the submission period.
Exactly right.
Yeah, this is the first office hours I've done while sitting on a patio.
Yeah, I was really kind of thinking about that every time we see you, your background has changed so darn significantly.
Yeah, that's right.
It's pretty great. It's pretty great.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things about being a developer evangelist is a lot of travel, lots of new scenery. So one of the interesting things about this job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So any of the viewers, do you ask me any questions that you want? I always say this, certainly it should be about Context.io or the app challenge, but I'll answer any question that you put in there. So
that's wonderful.
So a big shout out to that conference where I was at last week.
Yeah, how was the pig roast?
Pig roast was great. I'm drinking coffee out of, I know it's backwards on the video, but of this conference mug, which is forest green and feels very fitting my current location. So I'm going to mute. There's a truck driving past.
All right, 8 viewers. It's time to ask those questions. What is stumping you? What is keeping you from submitting right this very moment? Are there things about Context.io or the challenge you would like answers about? Let us know. We want to know. What else? I know I've said this before, but it is worth saying again. You are required to do a demo video of your application. So screen capturing, showing it on an actual device, either way is totally fine, but we want to see it working. We want to see what it does. We want you to walk us through step by step. Really helps judges, really helps the public to vote appropriately. Make sure that you are trying to get those videos uploaded in advance, at least a day before if you can, before the deadline. Those last final hours, it's a real bummer when a YouTube or a Vimeo slip up means that you don't make the deadline. So we don't want that to happen to you. So try to get that done early if you can.
Cool. No questions.
I know. Everybody's got it handled.
Yeah, great. Hey, here we go. Here's a question from Kyle, and I'll read it out loud first. Hey, Tony, I submitted a question on the website, but I thought I'd ask you and see if you have any insight. Basically, we aren't getting our callback webhook responses. 1 minute it'll work, then it won't, and will again 30 minutes later. So, yeah, I'm not sure if you're using our 2.0 API or the Lite API. Both have webhooks. It can, the timing of those webhooks is something that can be a little bit inconsistent, and that's largely based on a lot of the complexities of us talking to the email servers and getting that response back. There is a what am I trying to say? There is something that can happen every time in the 2.0 API. Every time that we fire a webhook, we have to do a sync. So the 2.0 API, we maintain an index of all of the email headers, and within that index, that index has to have those new messages in order for us to fire a webhook off. So we have to do that sync before we fire a webhook. And the thing is, we can't do a sync that often. So if a lot of email messages are coming into that user's email accounts, if we do a sync every time a message comes in, if there's a high volume, then we'll likely get throttled by the email provider, and they'll say, "Hey, this is an annoying client. They're trying to get data too fast, and in order to keep their server up and running, if everybody was talking to their servers that fast, then they'd have a scaling problem and stuff." So we do back off those syncs if the emails coming in are high volume. So the behavior that you might see is, especially if you're trying to test out webhooks and you're sending a lot of emails to your test account to try to iterate and work on the behavior inside your app. Maybe for the first couple of test emails that you send, you'll get a webhook within a couple seconds. Okay, so Kyle just said that they're on light. I'll continue talking about this 2.0 behavior, then I'll go back and talk about light in a second. What you might see is, if you're working on 2.0 webhooks, is the first couple emails that you send, you'll see the webhook right away. Then you might start to send an email and then not get a webhook, and then send an email, and then you'll get two webhooks, one for the previous message, one for the one you just sent. It becomes a probability that we'll do a sync if the volume gets really high, and that's just so we don't touch those servers way too often and get throttled. So if the email volume is really high, you might see that behavior where maybe you start getting all the webhooks every second or third email that you send to test it out. If you're seeing that behavior, maybe what you want to do is maybe send those test emails a little bit slower. It's also possible to just spread those test emails over a couple of test accounts. That might be a great way of doing that too. So in Light, occasionally the workers on our side do get in a queue. And when that happens, sometimes light webhooks do get delayed. So we're working to make our infrastructure more efficient so that doesn't happen. But it certainly does happen sometimes. So 30 minutes definitely seems like a little bit out of range of what's normal. So I'd say if you see that behavior frequently, especially if you notice that it's something that happens more on one email provider than a different one, that might be an indication that there is something that we could maybe tweak or do on our side. We can at least investigate. And that's good information for us to know. So if you see that happen very often, especially on certain email providers, shoot an email to support@context.io. And we'll certainly dive in and take a look. But that's certainly useful information for us to know that there might be a period of slowness for a certain email provider or something. We have seen that happen in the past. Cool. So next question is from Joe. And Joe says, "Hi, Tony. I noticed that the GitHub Objective-C library requires 3-legged authentication versus 2-legged. Can I talk about how that would work since Joe's planning to build an iOS app? Do you need to make a special request for this, or is the info in the console?" So yes, we do have a newly revised Objective-C library that should be awesome to work with. So I'm very glad that Joe's tried to use that and take a look at it. You do need to have a 3-legged key. The way to convert your key to 3-legged is to send an email to our support team. So that's support@context.io. Just send an email asking to convert the key to 3-legged. A couple of things to know. First, our three-legged support is not incredibly robust right now. It certainly works with the API. Everything in production works. Just a few of our tools don't work with it, right? So the iOS client library does. If you try to use one of our other client libraries with a three-legged key, it will not really work. So you'll have to if you're not using the iOS library and say you're making an Android app and you're trying to use like a Java library, you won't be able to use the Java library that we have up. You'll have to use your own. Also, things like our interactive console does not work with three-legged keys. So just be aware that those are kind of known things. We really want to increase our support and build that out. But just be aware when you convert to three-legged, you pretty much just have to use the iOS library. That's what's really well supported on it. So there's that, and so I guess I can talk a little bit about just before I follow up with Kyle's next question is the differences between two-legged and three-legged for those of you who might not understand the differences. So with a two-legged key, you use your main credentials, so that's your Connext.io key and your secret, to sign each of your requests, and that works across all of your users. Now, if you're building things like an iOS app, where the API calls are going to be made from your user's device, so from their Apple phone or from an Android phone, or even something like a Chrome plugin, where it's their web browser is the actual thing that's making the call directly, and it's not your web server. It's problematic to put your key and secret on their device, and essentially on every one of your users' device. So if somebody would decompile that and recover your secret, they would actually be able to access all of your users' emails, not just the one user that has a compromised phone. So that's a big problem. So that's where three-legged keys come in. Three-legged key is where you, when you add the user to your app, you'll get an access token, and you'll only be able to use that access token, and that'll only work on that user's email. So it's safe to put that access token on your user's device if it's in their web browser storage or on their mobile phone, or on their Apple Newton if you're building something for one of those devices. Anybody know what an Apple Newton is? Do you remember that at all? Anyway, if you are doing that, it's safe to put the access token on the device. If it gets decompiled and a malicious person gets that token, they'll only be able to access the email from that one user. And that's the reason why you'd want to do a three-legged key versus a two-legged. Cool. So next question's from Kyle. Saying thanks, he can follow up with me offline. They're using Outlook exclusively, and it happens frequently 2-3 times a day, and batches of 4 messages won't come through. Okay, so certainly follow up with our support team. That might be something that's wonky that's happening with Outlook, that we can take a look at and see if we can resolve it. Again, there's it's kind of like the Wild West talking to all these different email providers. So it might be the case that there's not a lot that we could do, but at least us being aware of it's going to be helpful. Certainly, it'll help us talk to other customers too that might be saying the same thing if it is indeed something on Outlook side. Cool. So.
Awesome. Really good questions, Joe and Kyle.
Yeah. So I suppose I can mention, going back to the mobile app development, we will be working on and building an Android SDK in addition to the newly updated Objective-C SDK that we currently have. So I know there's a number of people that are working on Android. So I know that right now it's a little bit awkward. You'll have to make those API requests yourself and essentially write your own kind of a very lightweight Android SDK if you're working in Android now. But in the near future, we will have an officially supported Android SDK. So if you're watching this maybe a month or two in the future, hopefully we'll have that out by then, and you'll be able to very easily just drop that into your Eclipse project or something, and be rocking on email data on Android. So that's coming soon.
Also, if anyone is willing to share anything about their app ideas, I know, big faux pas, but we'd sure love to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to hear about it. Yeah, so I was hoping that you'd be able to see the mountains that are that way, but it's a little bit hazy. I think there's some forest fires in the area, and it's kind of tough. But you can actually see the Grand Teton Mountain Range. So right. I think that truck's coming back. I'm going to mute again.
It's perfect timing for y'all to type your questions in while Tony's muted. The truck is going by. I'm about to sneeze.
All right. No questions.
No, everyone's got it under control. Well, Tony, I have a question for you, which is a question within a question. How frequently do you feel like you get new questions, or do you feel like they're typically repeat questions? Or in the past few weeks, with all these new folks hacking around on your tools, any new bugs pulled up? Any things that we should know about if we maybe haven't looked at the FAQ or like the posted solutions in the last couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I would say most of the questions are around just kind of getting started. I saw a couple of them come in today just about how to make a request to the API. So I think those are from some hackers who might be less familiar with APIs. So that would be something that I have seen that's I'd say fairly new, which I think is fantastic. That means that there's a lot of new engineers that are really using APIs for the first time as part of this app challenge, which is fantastic because APIs I like to think of are like Legos or the building blocks of apps, where you can just piece them together and you end up with all these different amazing services that you don't have to build or maintain yourself. You can leave all of that tough things to experts like us, right? So we can manage the complexity of email data, but companies like SendGrid can manage email sending for you. You don't have to stand up servers. Companies like Twilio could manage SMS and phone calls, so you don't have to talk to mobile carriers. Which, I mean, I don't want to talk to mobile carriers ever. So anyway, so it's great to see these new engineers. Playing around with APIs for the first time, and and to those people, if anybody are watching right now or will watch this video in the future, there's actually a fairly big debate in the kind of API provider community on should we even provide client libraries and SDKs, because if you're building an app in production, there's a lot of assumptions that sometimes are baked into how a client library works. Some are, say, more lazy than others, right? So you might not know exactly when the client library is going to make a request to the API or not. And that's stuff that, as an engineer, when you're architecting your app, you want to really understand exactly how you're interacting with these web services and APIs. So there's one school of thought that says, no, you should always write your own SDK. So, and there's this other school of thought that says, well, a lot of people just want to try the API out so they can use your SDK to kind of get started. And so you should definitely provide SDKs. And so my opinion is that as an API provider, we should provide SDKs for everyone to use, because they can get started and start making calls to the API within a couple of seconds. But then typically I think that as you take your app into beta and you start to really look and saying, hey, what can I do to improve the efficiency or performance of this or that? Maybe you have a really good idea and say, well, I'm really only using webhooks and list contacts, or like a couple of resources. Then it'd be pretty easy for you to then go back and replace the officially supported SDK with a lightweight SDK that you write yourself, that is just the exact perfect little piece of software that's simple to debug. You know exactly how you're talking to the API, and then you end up using that when your app goes into production. So I think like a more hybrid approach, but going back to these more novice engineers that haven't used APIs before, it's a really great thing to not only use the officially supported client libraries, but then also they're all up on GitHub. You can look at the source code. You can see exactly how we make requests to the API. So you could dive into, say, like our Python library, look at these internal like request functions and build URL and all the different kind of helper methods in all the different classes in the library, and see exactly what we do to call the API. And you could just copy and paste that code and practice and see what it's like to use an API without a client library. That's a pretty good kind of learning exercise that I think might be valuable.
Very cool. So would you say that the Context.io APIs are pretty accessible for new developers?
Yeah. I mean, it's so we support OAuth 1A as far as the authentication goes, which is a little bit different than how a lot of APIs are doing it. A lot of API providers use OAuth 2. And that's where you go through an OAuth dance where you redirect back and forth, end up getting an access token and using that to sign requests. With Context.io, you actually use your key and secret to sign each request. So it's a little bit different of a flavor of OAuth. And once you wrap your head around that, that it's going to be different than, say, like getting a access token for, say, Google Docs or Calendar or something, right? That's a little bit different of a process, and that's why I say it's really great to dive into our client libraries, take a peek, and see how we sign those requests, and then from that, it's not that difficult. Say you're trying to, let's say write a like make a request to Context.io using a language that we don't have a library in, like let's say Lua or something, right? But you understand, and you can, maybe it's tricky, but you can read a little bit of PHP or you understand Python or something. It'd be pretty easy for you to go in to, say, our PHP client library, see the steps that we take, how we form that request that's authenticated with OAuth, and then go through the same steps in Lua and successfully be able to make an API request that way. So I just encourage you to kind of dive in and play around and take a look.
Totally. So we did get a note from GZ hey, I like your name, asking if it would be a good idea to demo their app right now. So unfortunately, we're not going to kind of share the screen with you. I don't know that we would do that, but if you want to write a couple sentences about what that app is, or if there's any URL links that you would like to share, we're certainly happy to, chat about those with you real time. So feel free to do that.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. Coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So ZDoggy is working on deploying, which deploying can be kind of tricky. So best of luck with that. And the part that always annoys me is, especially at like on a hackathon that just lasts over a weekend, is the you have to wait for DNS to propagate. So you might have like the most amazing domain name, and you want to just tell people, yeah, it's this myawesomeapp.com when you're doing the demo. But I've been to a couple of hackathons where I had to just put up like an IP address up there because it's waiting on DNS and stuff. So that was annoying. So anyway, good luck on that. And if you do have any problems deploying, depending on which hosting provider you're deploying to, feel free to reach out to me. If I'm not able to answer your questions to help you out, I'm really close friends with a lot of great people at many of the hosting companies, and I could certainly make some introductions. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to work with you and help you out as well. Cool. So Kyle says that he's shared offline, but what he's building is a college student-focused app that intercepts Blackboard, which is a learning management system, and other emails, things like if the class was canceled, to provide a Google Now-ish app with certain actions, like you can contact the instructor or classmates, find a lab to work in, those kinds of things, which I think is awesome. Now, if I am remembering correctly, I believe that Kyle is working with Ball State University, I think, and that's actually kind of funny because that was the first college that I went to in Muncie, Indiana. I went to Ball State in 1999 and dropped out in like around 2000 or so. I was studying audio engineering actually, and at Ball State they have a 5-year audio engineering program, which is pretty cool, and I actually dropped out to work at a recording studio in Atlanta, but it was great that Kyle's at Ball State and I went to Ball State, so we had a little Hoosier, Indiana connection there. So that was a small world, I think. Actually, what's also funny, David Letterman went to Ball State. That's his alma mater, and during my time there, I was really trying to get the David Letterman scholarship, which is only for C average students. So whenever my parents got mad at me because of my C average grades, I just said, hey, I'm trying to get Dave's scholarship. And, it didn't really work that well. I mean, like convincing my parents that was a good idea.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I got to say, though, I really love Kyle's idea in that it is using email data to do a non-email function. I mean, I think the receipt parching feature is a great representation of that, but this is another really great example of how, this API is not just about functionality within your email account. It's about, bridging that gap to the rest of the world and to all the other things you do in your day-to-day life, which is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's great because, what Kyle's looking at is that narrow slice of data about college, about classes, about what's going on. And anybody could look and see the kinds of data and information that comes into email, and the monolithic email client that we all use to interact with email is, I think, is a fantastic app to do certain kinds of actions and activities. But it's certainly, I could imagine the app that Kyle's building, and it's way better to take this data and consume it into a separate app than try to have the burden be on the user. Do I star this email saying class is canceled? Do I move it to a folder? Do I look at the email, and then in a different app I have to type in and make a reminder or something? So that is a great example of the way that users want to interact with that data is the best way is not inside of their email client. So I encourage people, if there's about 2 weeks left, so that's if you don't have an idea yet, there's still, I think, plenty of time to start working on one. Or if you're building an app and you're almost done, start working on a second one. It's
that's true. You can submit more than one app. That's totally fine as long as they're different. Why not better your odds, huh?
And you could take a look at your own email account and just think about what are the pain points that I have, there's no reason why you couldn't just build a very small single serving app that does one thing that solves one pain point that you have with your emails. It could be something like, at work I get GitHub notifications, and every single time I get a GitHub notification that has this thing in it, I really would want it to go into Evernote or something else instead, or whatever, right? The odds are, if you have that pain point and you can maybe make a very simple script that just stands up a very small server that maybe just does something once a day and cleans up this one little small problem, that's something that I think that the scope of that kind of app would be fairly small. But if it's a pain point that you have and it solves a problem that you have, with the long tail of the internet, there's probably 50,000 people out there that have the exact same problem. Mm. And that's the kind of thing where if you build a small kind of single serving app like that, get something that's a little bit functional, go post it on some forums, put it up on Reddit around people that might have the same kinds of problems as you. And if you could get 100 people on it, and prove that this little small app is solving a real problem, I think that kind of thing would certainly get the attention of the panel of judges. So so I don't think that it doesn't necessarily have to be this big, full-blown, massive app. There's so many, such a wide variety of problems that are in email that I think that even a small app could have a whole lot of functionality and a whole lot of value as well. Cool. So I got another message from Joe. I'll read this out loud. Hi again, Tony. Joe's trying to search for all the messages that contain attachments through the console. Use the file name field under messages, but nothing is returned. Is that the right parameter to use for searching? So the very first question is, are you using the 2.0 API or Lite? And if you could let me know that, Joe, I'll continue answering the question for you.
Well, while we're waiting, since probably there are users that are using either 2.0 or Lite that might have this question, perhaps answer for both?
Sure. So if you're trying to get a list of files, it is certainly the best API to use would be the 2.0 API because we have a files resource there. Again, the difference between 2.0 and Lite is in 2.0, we maintain an index of the different messages. We also index all the files. So in the IMAP world, okay, cool, Joe's using 2.0. While I'm talking, or actually it's hard for me to do two things at once, I'm going to get a link to the correct endpoint in 2.0 that you want to use to list files. There it is. Okay. So it's a get on this. I want to drop it in the chat window, and then I'll keep talking about the I was saying before. Cool. So in the 2.0 API, when we do that initial sync and we index all the messages, we look at the body of each message, and we look at each MIME body part. So an email message is just a bunch of plain text sections, and one part of that body might be, here's the plain text content in the message. There might be one that's, here's the HTML content. And there might be one or multiple parts that is, this is an attachment, this is an image, this is a Twitter icon in this signature, this is a PDF that's attached, and all those are just different plain text chunks. In 2.0, when we do that sync, we look at each message and figure out if that email does have an attachment. If it does, then we index that file. So the link that I dropped is a call to the 2.0 API to list all the files. If you just do a get on that with not passing any parameters in, I think the default limit's 25. It'll actually give you the 25 most recent attachments that has come into that user's account. You certainly can, if you want to, you can filter in that file name field. You can put a regular expression in there. So you could say something like, give me all of the emails with a certain extension. Or there's a number of regular expression patterns you can use to say, give me anything that ends in .jpeg, .gif, .ping, so if you're looking for, say, all images, or if you're looking for just PDFs, you could also do that. And when you do that list files call with, say, that regular expression in it, it'll only give you all of the emails and files that end in .pdf or whatever. So that is the best way to do it. In Lite, we don't maintain an index. So it's a little bit more tricky. What you have to do is actually iterate through each message. And when you do that, we'll give you information on the file of each message, but there's no way for you to say, give me all the files, because we have to go and talk to the email server, and we don't know which messages have files attached or not, because we don't have that index. So it's still possible to do that in Lite. You just have to do a little bit more work and a bit more lifting on your side. So since you're working with files, I think 2.0 is a very appropriate choice for what you're trying to do. But I would encourage you to play around with that. The resource that I pasted in, the list files resource. One thing that is also interesting that might not be super obvious is that I'm guessing that that your app will want to do more than just list the files. You'll probably want to download the content of them and do something with it. Once you get that file ID, if you listed the files, that's the one thing that you'll use to fetch the content. I can put a link in here on what you'll do to fetch the content, and it's shockingly called content is the name of that, and it's a sub-resource of files. So I'll put this in here as well. It's also a get. One thing to note, and this might be easier for you, you can actually change there's a parameter you can pass called as_link. If you pass that parameter in, then rather than have us actually push the content in that request that you made to the API, rather than have the content be in that response, which sometimes that can be a little bit unwieldy, especially if, say, it's like a 20 meg attachment in a Gmail account or something. If it's a really large file, it might be problematic for your server to keep that request open long enough, because like, say, if you're using, say, Apache or something, you can certainly configure how long it takes for a HTTP request to time out, but it's usually in the 30-second range. So if it's a really large file, you might hit that as a problem. If you pass that as link optional parameter, then what we do in the response, you'll get a link to an S3 bucket. That link is publicly accessible, but it only is live for 2 minutes. So probably no one's going to go and try to download it. It could be problematic. Certainly you want to keep people's data secret, but that is a possibility. You could provide that link to a user. They could then click it and download the file themselves off of S3. And again, that link's good for 2 minutes. So that's just an optional way to get access to that file if you don't want to have access right in that HTTP request. So cool. So Joe says, thanks. He was using the so what Joe was doing, and I said this is probably a fairly common, I wouldn't even say mistake, but there is a sub resource in 2.0 under messages, and that is where if you say have a message ID, you could make a call to that and get the files, the attachments that are just on that one message. And that'd be great if say, if that was more like the pattern that your app wanted to interact with the email data in. That's also something that you could do. But if you're trying to get a listing of all the files, then certainly the files resource is the best place to go. Thanks for the question, Joe. I think that truck's coming back. I'm going to mute again.
All right, so we've got 12 minutes left in episode 3 of the live virtual office hours with Tony. So if you have any questions that you were like, oh, I'm not sure, this is a silly question, now is your time. This is silly question time. These last 12 minutes are for questions that you think might be too dumb to say publicly.
I actually prefer silly questions.
Tony, while we're waiting for additional questions, outside of feverishly answering any Context.io submitter questions that may come in over the next couple of days, do you guys have any additional Idaho adventures that we could talk about?
Yeah, well, I certainly there's tons and tons of hikes. There's there's countless hikes around here. So we'll probably be going on some hiking. I think we'll probably go back up to Lake Jackson, which is beautiful, and do some more kayaking and picnicking. It's actually great because there's a number of really small islands in the lake, and so what I love to do is just paddle to an island and I don't really tell the National Park Service, but I actually claim it for my own. And this has never happened. I've never had any other kayakers or anybody try to land on my island while I'm in possession of it. But there would be an epic battle, and I would fight them off for my private picnic area. So I'll probably do some piracy. I think that's probably something I'll be doing. So
watch out if you're anywhere near Tony's private islands.
Yeah, well, and there's also I don't know if anyone's familiar with Grand Teton Brewing Company. There's an amazing brewery that's very close, and they have fantastic beers. So I think that's definitely something that will happen in the very near future. So that's also on the agenda. That's excellent.
I think the best way to answer software questions or coding questions is with a fantastic brew by your side.
That's right. That's right. In fact, the Context.io team, they're very familiar with a lot of times, in Slack, I drop in if I'm working from a conference or working from a coffee shop or working from home. And they definitely know working from brewery. That's, because I'm based out of Denver, Colorado. Usually, rarely actually there. Sorry, the truck's coming back again. I apologize if it's noisy. But yeah, I am a huge fan of breweries and trying different kinds of local craft beers and everything. So that's also something I'll be doing up here.
Right on.
Well, we've got 8 minutes left. Anything else from anybody watching?
So exciting.
Yeah, probably will not be riding horses again because it was fun. It was a lot of fun, but I don't know. I don't really speak horse that well, so
connection wasn't there, huh?
It was tough. It was tough. I mainly because I recognized that if the horse wanted me not to be there, it could do that.
Totally. Keen has a question. He's asking about the current submission count and any cool ideas that we have reviewed so far. So I'm just going to pop in and take a look. We do have about, I would say, a half dozen or so draft submissions that are in various states of completion right now. And that's why I'm encouraging you guys to all, really kind of submit early, because these folks with draft submissions have one up on you. They're already halfway done with their submission form. So, move it or lose it. No, I'm just joking. But typically a lot of submissions come in at the end, so we're not too curious. I can't share a lot about what other people's submissions actually are, but I will say that I've definitely seen a couple so far that I feel like are very cool. Really just one specifically about how communicating more in real time can be done in an easier way than via a long text email. So there's one that has to do with that. But all the submissions will be opened up for you guys to take a look at and peruse after the submission period closes. So typically the next day or so, once we've manually person goes through and looks at each and every one to make sure that it's met those eligibility requirements. We'll be posting them publicly in the gallery. You'll receive a note when yours is up, and you can definitely go and see what other things are up as well. Follow-up question to that: can I share my idea and get feedback privately offline? Definitely. You can email Tony, you can email DevPost, and we'll connect you to Tony. You can also, like I said, start your submission, put it into practice, and we can take a look at it there as well. It won't be made public, like I said, until after the submission period ends, so you have plenty of time to update.
Yeah, and I would certainly love to chat with people about their app and feedback, and certainly I'm here as a resource. So feel free to reach out. And I'd be more than happy to provide some feedback and do whatever I can to help you. That's why I'm here. So definitely reach out.
So Tony, since we are near the deadline, there's only less than a couple weeks left. Any tips for people who are doing this within 48 hours of the deadline? Any fast, I can get this done really quickly if I use these 3 tutorials, or go around it in this way? Anything that people should know for those last minute hacks?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, and I mentor at the more traditional weekend hackathons as well. And a lot of what I tell people is be sure that the scope is appropriate for the time that you have left. So it's really easy to kind of bite off more than you can chew, so to speak, right? And think that you can really get a whole bunch of stuff done. So the best thing to do is to think about what is the unique core value of the app that you're building, and be sure that you nail that, right? We're certainly looking for apps that are market ready. That's one of the judging criteria that the judges will be looking for. But certainly if you only have 2 days and you have to say skip building the user sign up flow and just hard code your one test account in there, and in the submission or in the video that you make, you can just say, hey, I built this in 2 days, and this is as far as I got. This is what the app is doing. It would take me another week to get the user sign up flow and to get, say, a marketing splash page and all that stuff. But I'll be ready to really launch it publicly in this short amount of time. That's something that I can't certainly predict what the judges will be doing. It's certainly the choice is all theirs. But I mean, I would encourage you to really focus on the core value of the app, and then you can always build that stuff, in the future and that kind of thing. You can show off exactly what your app's trying to do. So
definitely, I think that's a really good point. And the other thing to note is that judging criteria is around scoring. Requirements are what gets you in front of the judges. So take a look at the requirements that are listed on the website to make sure that you're even going to get in front of the judges, which you shouldn't be too difficult. But there are also 3 other criteria, for judges to score on. So if you're not market ready, don't let that be the determiner for if you're going to enter or not. It's not a deal breaker. It's just something that we'll be looking for.
Yep, exactly. Well said.
Oh, thanks. All right, we have a couple more minutes. So if anybody has a last question to get in before the wire, this is the time.
No, I certainly want to thank the people that have asked questions and stuff. They were great questions, and I hope it was valuable answers. And certainly, if anything comes up in between sessions, we have one more office hours next week. I think next Monday, I believe, right? Isn't it Monday?
I think you're right. Yep, next Monday morning. So same time, but on a Monday.
Yeah. We're certainly around, so don't hesitate to reach out to us. More than happy to answer any questions you have in between those sessions. Happy to talk about your app idea, give feedback. So we're certainly around and accessible, and here to help you out.
Absolutely, awesome. Well, like I said, like Tony said, thank you everybody. We're pumped to see what you guys have built and are building. Everything that we've heard, questions that have been asked have been really cool. So I'm pumped to see everything. It's gonna be great. And yeah, we'll see you in 6 days.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. All right, everyone, take care.
Yep, happy hacking. I'll talk to you later on.